So, welcome this morning. Today we are going to have an informative and lively discussion, no debate, about our supper clubs that are about to begin. So here's what you need to know, at least initially. If you have not, you don't have to do this, but you have to kind of. If you have not signed up to participate in what we're about to talk about, and if you're a member of the class, I'm going to encourage you to do it. I'm fixing to describe what it is, and at the end of class, if you have not signed up, if you hadn't filled out the jot form, whose baby was it? Baby's metal. So here's what we're doing. We are beginning we're going to start this morning by going through kind of our core values and what we've realized, and I'll tell you how we've realized it, how we've come to it. We don't do some stuff well. There are things that we can do better. And so one of the things we're addressing is this idea of community, and we're going to do a better job. And one of the tools that we're going to use are supper clubs. The name of our class is 1024. Why? Hebrews 10:24. Very good. Now I'm going to talk about Hebrews 10:24 in just a moment, but before I get there, generally speaking, we have goals in this class. I hope these are the goals of every Bible fellowship class. I mean, there's nothing. This is not even imaginative. This is just pretty straightforward. I want our class, and we do this. All of the teachers work hard during our hour that we spend together, to provide faithful biblical teaching. It's our normal practice to go through a book of the Bible using expository teaching and try to understand the context and the meaning of what the author was trying to communicate to his original audience. Now here's where, this is where we get to what we're about to do. I hope you want to be involved in biblical community, and we're going to talk very specifically about what that means. And then finally, we want to provide care for one another. Now, there's a ton of overlap in all of these. You can't be an obedient child of God and ignore any one of these, right? You can't read the Bible, understand what it says about what it means to love one another, and ignore those bottom two. Here's the truth, and this is what we need to address. It's possible for you to show up on Sunday morning and consume the teaching, and it looks like everything's great because you all look happy sitting in here and you're smiling and everything's groovy, but you're just dying on the inside. And that could be true personally, it could be true maritally, it could be true in many different ways. So, of course, it's important that we do a good job accurately trying to communicate what God intends to communicate with the Bible. But it can't stop there. It can't stop there. Here it is. Now, here's my first question. The verse in the ESV reads, "And let us consider how to," and here's the interesting phrase, "stir up one another to love and good works." So don't misread that. Hebrews 10:24 does not say you need to love one another. It says that you need to, there's this interaction you see, stirring up one another. Well, before we get to the stir up, give me examples of love and good works. For sure. Love the hub. That's it.
Praying for each other.
Praying for one another.
Being available during crisis, whatever it might be.
Right, yeah. Keep going.
Checking in outside of setup time.
And that makes somebody feel so good. Like when you just reach out to somebody because you're, intentionality. I'm going to try to use as few of those words. I'm not going to say transparency, vulnerability, intentionality.
Oh, brain freeze. Too many big words.
He's
What else? Anything else you can think of? We're mature. And did you say humanely compassionate? Say more.
Like what's an example of like tragedies that you see and everybody gathered doing that,
Yeah,
the love is evident. We come together doing that.
yeah.
Let's be proactive.
Compassion. Well, how in the world, what did the writer of Hebrews, who we don't know who that was, but the writer of Hebrews, what did he mean by this idea of stirring up? Any ideas? How would you stir me to do these things? How would I stir you up to do these things? I can't hear.
Influence,
What do you mean?
just sharing what you feel like you're led to do, and just sharing your story may compel someone else.
Yeah, modeling. Yeah.
being vulnerable. Well, you said not to say that.
You can say it. I'm sorry. Say it.
I mean, I think you have to be vulnerable to one another also, like, so even like as far as like when you make mistakes or if your marriage is struggling, so that other people feel like they can come to you and
Yeah.
on that. And like a big part of how we stir up one another is going to be how we use our tongue.
Here's the sad truth. Many of you grew up in homes, and many of you live a life absent of what she just described. There is no, for some of you perhaps, there is no one in your life that you have the type of relationship with that it would be expected that the two of you would share the ugly stuff. I failed. I messed this up. I hurt him. I hurt you. I hurt my children. Those kind of things. Yes?
I think we live in such a rotation and routine of life that sometimes, to me, this means you may have to take a Sunday afternoon instead of going through your normal routine to go and do something that's uncomfortable. Like, I'm making this up, but for us, a couple years ago, when the guys in the group came and helped my mom just do the yard work, like some people probably are not good at yard work, or like they don't, do their own yard work, but to help other people do theirs was huge for us. So I think getting uncomfortable and getting into that, get out of routine for a day. You're okay. You can do that next Sunday can be your Sunday afternoon nap. But just to get uncomfortable and get out of that vulnerable is super important.
It's so easy.
Stirring up.
It is so easy for me to be selfish with my time. It is, like I'm telling you, I love my time. I can think, and you combine that with the fact that I'm an absolute Olympic procrastinator, and I can, but, and a break dancer. And what happens is that I choose to avoid these opportunities because I'm selfish. I'll let other people do it or whatever. But Mary Lois is exactly right. These acts of service where it is inconvenient, and it may not be in itself pleasurable, right? It may not be, entertaining, recreational. It may be work. Other ideas?
I think, like, when I read this verse, I feel like I take it as, like, stirring up. I just, like, think about, like how God calls us to community and how He places people in your life. So when, say I'm around somebody who encourages me to spend more time in the Word, or just says, hey, I'm studying, da-da-da-da-da, well, then that encourages me and spurs me on to growth and whatever. And so that's kind of how I take it, is like it's stirring me up to, be in this process of sanctification, becoming more and more like Christ, and encouraging me to love and to good work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, some of the modern, it makes perfect sense, so much that you could maybe paraphrase the Bible, because some of the modern paraphrases use the word encourage. It's the idea that we want to interact with each other in such a way that we encourage one another to do those things. Anybody else before we move on?
I think something this class does really well is
receiving service from this class list for the past year. Something we felt was just genuine caring for each other. It was more than just dropping off dinner for the night off because we were going to take them a meal, and more than just cleaning up a yard. It was the attitude and the heart that was with it. Like, we felt it a lot from our class.
We're going to talk about the word care in just a moment. I'm going to get choked up. Well, you've named them all. Like so I've got a list here. This is not an exhaustive list, but I want to share this. So in these supper clubs, here's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get everyone who is willing to put themselves in a position to experience biblical community. Now, I acknowledge, everybody, you know this, I know this, everybody knows this. There is a spectrum. There's this willingness that exists in this room. Some of you, when we talk about this, are like, oh yes, this is going to be fantastic. You long for this. And then there are some of you that are in the room that when you hear this, you're like, no. I'm happy. My guarded self needs to stay guarded. I've never experienced anything like that. I've never been asked to share things that would even approach vulnerable. And so you're wondering, like, can I even, like, no, I can't do this. This is asking too much. It's not asking too much. I'm telling you that this is something that Christians are expected to do. If you read the 2nd chapter of Acts, and here's this, probably the most important single passage. Now, there's much more said in the epistles, but in the book of Acts, Luke records what the atmosphere, what the context and environment was in the earliest church. Christ is resurrected, He has ascended to heaven, and Pentecost has happened, and God is growing His church rapidly. And in the 2nd chapter of Acts, Luke gives us a description of what it looked like. This is what, I'm comfortable saying, this is what a healthy people do when they're involved in a church. And it's going to be, in addition, breaking bread together, all these things. I want to, so here's a list. Based on that passage from Acts and what we've talked about, what I've thought about, here's what I think it means. These supper clubs, I want them to be warm. What does that mean? That
Cold food.
not cold food. You can't eat ice cream. What is warmth?
Inviting.
Okay, invited.
Yeah. Open.
Inviting, you're welcome. Like, I want you to be here. Okay. Say it again.
Safe, like safe. You feel safe.
You're ahead of me.
Mary Jane, shut up.
What is, so when you're in a warm setting, what comfortable.
Accepted.
There's this, all of you are correct. That's exactly right. It will be without, you get to a state of consciousness where it's like okay to be whatever you are. It's okay to just be who you are. Did y'all know that as humans we have a tendency to put on airs and to show up, and I want to look mature and I want to look put together and I need to be, like for me it's like I always need to be engaging with people. Sometimes I don't want to do that. There have been days where probably everybody in this room, I've been, hey, I don't want to be here. In a warm environment, you kind of get to be who you want to be in that moment. Not sin. We're not talking about sinning, but we don't show up. We don't show up with I want to make this person think this about me. We show up where we are, so to speak. And it's comfortable. It's warm. It's okay. It's like Tim's in a bad mood. Tim's not talking a lot tonight. What's wrong, Tim? And warmth lets me go, this is happening. Any other comments about warmth? We want these supper clubs to be welcoming, warm. Anything else?
Like when you walk into your grandmother's house, it's kind of what I think about warmth.
She wants you to be there. Safety.
I need a prize.
Where's Andrew Knight?
Where's it? Throw her a candy bar. For those of you that don't know, so I'm one of the teachers. Andrew Knight is one of the teachers, and every time he teaches, he gives culinary treats. Every time. He puts a let's stop. He puts a speaker right here, plays a song, and if you guess the song first, he throws you a something. What is safety? What is it? What do you think? What does it mean in warmth for this community to be a safe community?
Neighborhood watch.
Robert, you're in time.
Trust.
Well, like, you're not gonna share, like, people feel safe to tell you something that you're not gonna go share with other people.
So trust. That is that I can tell you the truth and know that you're not going to tell my truth to somebody else. And by my truth, I don't mean relativism. I mean, like, you're not going to tell somebody the truth about me.
And when you do that, you don't judge me differently.
Yeah.
You can, right? The concept in counseling is to be known and be loved. Like, I can tell you that I'm imperfect, and you expect to hear that from me, and it's okay. Like, I don't need you to be perfect. I think it also includes, there has to be the expectation that in safety, in communities where safety is exhibited, I'm not going to tempt you to sin. We're not going to get together and gossip. We're not going to get drunk together. We're not going to gossip together. We're not going to let each other talk about our spouses in ways that would be like all of the things that can happen even among well-meaning Christians in a safe community. Those things, if they show up, they're addressed. What else?
I think of like confidentiality, like if something does come up that, I mean, you mentioned gossip, but I'm not gonna go say, you know, Kyle and Lindsay are going through this. You know,
Right.
It's not, I'm telling you this because I want to share this with my group in confidence. And I'm sharing it with this group because I'm comfortable here and I feel warm here. And I'm not
But
gonna share it in the whole class.
Right.
Because I'm not ready to do that.
Yeah, a few times, I don't mean to make light of that. A few times in my teaching life, people have shared something in class. Have y'all ever heard me say this? Like, be willing to share, but be wise. Like that idea? I love it when people aren't wise. Like, you open it up like, what's hurting you in your life? And then they're like, wow. But to Lindsay's point, if Lindsay and Kyle, I'm using them because she used an example. If they're in a community and they say we're struggling with this in our marriage, it's got to be expected that nobody else is going to. They've told everybody they want to know right then. I want your help, your prayers. I'm not asking you to ask anybody else to pray for me. I'm asking you to be involved in my life. Anything else with regard to safety? What it would mean to have a safe community?
I was gonna say companionship, but it all ties back into that warmth and safety. But in addition to that, just accountability. You know, everybody just, all believers holding each other accountable to, stand Christian. So accountability is big.
Yeah. So Key brings up. This is a great point. There's two sides to this coin. There's a willingness to tell about failures, and there's a willingness to not condemn, but also not say it's okay, right? This is so prevalent in. Let me tell you, this is not accountability, okay? And this happens all the time. Hey, man, I'm really struggling with pornography, and the response is, man, we all do. It's okay. That's not accountability. That's not accountability. Accountability is, I understand how you could be involved in that, but it's so dangerous. Please stop. I want to be somebody that helps you not do that. It's not okay, right? So to Key's point, Accountability is speaking truthfully about sin, but to be held accountable so often, you have to be willing to admit sin. And here I go back. Some of you grew up in a home where it wasn't safe to talk about sin. You never had a parent that confessed their sin to you. You never had a parent that said, not all of you, but perhaps you had parents that couldn't say I was wrong. And it's never been modeled for you. You've never been in a relationship with another person that was willing to say, can I tell you something that is embarrassing? Can I tell you something that is on me? And this is part of what it means to be safe. It's also what it means to be warmth. Exhibit warmth. Anything else? Somebody raised their hand. One more person was going to maybe say something.
I think also it's important that, I mean, we're talking about biblical community, but it's important to like make sure that the framework is biblically sound, right? Like that any advice or whatever that you may share back and forth, it's not necessarily like, well, I think da 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 da.
Yeah.
You know, like I think it's important to the framework is scripturally bound.
Super important. And the host couples are going to be responsible for leading out in this, okay? So we're going to talk about the format in just a moment, but each group will have a host couple. You could, I mean, there is no, this wasn't a popularity contest. These were people that either had shown interest or we knew that had already done, like they were already practicing this. We got a ton of people. How many groups are there total? 13 groups, so there's 13 host couples, and they'll lead out in what Kyle just said, right? They will, in moments of when we're talking in these groups and something needs to be said, that host couple will be responsible in making sure that it is anchored in biblical truth. It's not some contemporary pop psychology moment. It's about the Bible, not about what might or might not make you feel good in the temporary. We're talking like all we're going to do is get together and talk about problems. We're not going to do that.
That's probably not going to even happen for a while. We've got to build some.
Let's get to this. Transparency. We've talked about this, but listen, y'all. The way you know that you're in the presence of a friend is that it's okay to tell the truth about everything, right? Some of you might remember. I can't remember this. I lose track of time. This may have been a year ago or 5 years ago. I can't remember. But we were talking about the idea of friendship, and friendship carries with it this paramount idea. I am only going to do what will promote your well-being. That's what, if you're a friend, it means that you are promoting another's well-being. You're not harming them. You're not putting them in dangerous situations. You're not tempting them to sin. And so as parents, right? So parenting is you're a friend to your child, but it carries with it authority and responsibility that's different than just, me and Forrest. Marriage, right? It's friendship with lifelong commitment and physical intimacy and other things, right? But at the root of all this is I only want to do for my wife what will promote her well-being. And here's what we have. Friends. We want to be friends to one another, and that means that I can tell you the truth about me. I can expect to hear the truth about you, and when there's cause for celebration, we can celebrate together. And when there's cause for tears, we can cry together. And when it calls for a rebuke, it's loving. When it calls for encouragement, it's loving, right? This is what it means to be a friend to someone. And necessary is this idea of an unwillingness to be transparent can turn into deceit. Think about that. I'm not saying that everybody you meet at church, how are you doing? You don't have to tell them everything. But if you're claiming to love someone and you're not willing to tell the truth about something because it might make you look bad, you're putting something forward that's not real. And that's really hard for some people. Anything? Didn't mean to do it. Don't know what to do now. Anything else on transparency? Okay, here we go. Now we get to the fun stuff. Fellowship, right? David talked about this a month ago from the pulpit. The idea that we are not T-shirts are going to show up with this on, and I can tell. Like, we're not just joined at the hip; we're joined at the heart. And then that's all right. We need class T-shirts that say that. So weird. All right. And it's fun. I want these. We want the leadership wants these supper clubs to be fun. Like, we want you to look forward to doing this. So maybe I should have started with fun.
Well, that's how you get to all those other things: fellowship, fun, safety, transparency.
So next time we do this, I'm going to change those.
You buried the lead.
But you can expect that your host couple will do what they can to facilitate this being an enjoyable experience. Laughter. My wife and I were eating with a daughter and one of her, I'm sorry, I started to say one of her boyfriends.
Well, that's interesting.
We're gonna need to talk.
Right. One of our daughter's boyfriends. And my wife, who is a wonderful conversation starter, asked the question, when do you laugh the hardest? When do you laugh the hardest? And everybody at the table kind of said the same thing. And it's when you're in the presence of friends. Like, it's that humor that you just get to just laugh. And like, I've got a gear of laughter that goes from like appropriately volumed to like, calm Tim down. That happens around friends. Only my friends have seen that. So this is what we hope to accomplish. Does anybody want to say anything else, especially any of the host couples? Have I failed to say something that is?
Yeah, I was just gonna say too. You know, I'm very shy. Linda, you know, she's the outspoken one. Well, let's hear it. Also transparency. But truly, you know, I wanted to say that, you know, going through all this, I know it's community, biblical community is built too. So, you know, not any pressure. I was sitting there the first three. I was sitting there going, man, this is tough. But for everybody that's coming to anyone's house, know that we're going to build this too. I mean, it's, you know,
It's a process.
It is. It's a process, and I know, you know.
Everybody has to cry the first night. Everybody. If you don't cry the first night, we're breaking your group up. We're going to
Get it wrong.
Just to kind of take that pressure down to where it's we're gonna start off with the fellowship and fun.
This is the goal. We're naming this is the ideal. And for some of us, this will take longer to get, you know, thank you for saying that. I really should have started with fun and fellowship.
It's okay. We got there. We circled back.
All right, let's start over. Anybody else? Okay. This issue of caring. This in addition to what we do in the big gathering here. This is what it means to care for somebody, to meet prayer needs. Now listen, we pass around a prayer sheet every Sunday, and I'm thankful that we do that. But I know that this is true, that there are things that don't get written on that because they're very personal, for instance. And so in these small groups, here's going to go back to that past slide. There will be times where it's obvious that you're gonna commit to pray with somebody about something. Meet spiritual, emotional, financial needs. This goes back to what I was saying about how like I feel like I always got to have my A game on when I'm at church. I've shared this with y'all before. There have been extended periods of time in the last 5 years that I have just been so clinically depressed. I take Prozac every morning, and my closest friends knew that I had some really great emotional needs. Like, I could show up and fight my way through and you wouldn't have known it. But the real Tim was really suffering on the inside. And there are emotional needs in this room. There are people in this room that are lonely. There are people in this room that are hurting because of relationships that they've been involved with. They might have hurt people in relationships and they need to share that. Their financial needs. We live in a culture where it's so embarrassing to say, I need help with this or with that. There are people in this room that have financial needs, spiritual needs. I want to repent of this. I want to do better at this. Those are spiritual needs. And so care, the idea of caring for someone, means that we're willing to address all of those. What is benevolence in the church sense? By the way, benevolence just means kindness, but when we say it in church, what do we mean? If somebody has a parent that dies, if somebody has a sickness, it's this idea of stepping in with kindness when there's a special, I hate to say crisis because not all deaths are crises, but I'm saying like when somebody needs special attention, we want to be right there to show that attention. And we do a good job at this. If you've ever, I hate to say it, but like, I've made this joke before, like, in the South, in a Sunday school class like this, in a church like this, like, if somebody dies in your family, like, you're a fool if you don't tell anybody because they're going to bring you the best food in the world. I've made the joke, my granddad died, this was years and years ago, and I asked my mom, very inappropriately and way too soon, can we fake another death? Because it's too far. Too soon. My mom told me it was too soon.
It was just, there was never a time that it wouldn't have been though.
Be wise, Tim. Be wise.
Thank you.
He's died 3 times now.
All right, here are those supper clubs.
Still vote?
All right. Am I correct that everybody should have been contacted by their host couple?
Yes.
Everyone should have been contacted.
Probably should have opened.
That was the idea.
All right, so if not very soon, everybody that signed up has been assigned a host couple. And what's going to happen is you're going to get in.
If you haven't been contacted, raise your hand. We'll shame your host.
So,
I'm not in a group message.
so the host couple, they're not your pastors. They don't have any authority over you. Like they're genuinely just facilitators. They're here to get the ball rolling. It doesn't mean that they'll be the most active person in the group. There's a conversation going on that I don't know about.
Yeah, it's Kyle.
It may be that once these groups get going that there'll be elements of leadership that come from people in the class that aren't host couples, right? So please don't think that every host couple, we're holding them up as spiritual giants who can minister to every one of your needs all by themselves. That's not what it means. We've intentionally kept them small, including the host couple. There's no more than 10 would be the largest. Some of them would be. Are there any smaller than 7?
I think there might be a few with 5.
Okay. So it's not like when you get invited to show up for something, you're walking into anything that feels like this. Like you're gonna begin to get to know just a few people, right? So we've tried to eliminate that sense of intimidation. Now here's the ideal. Here's the ideal. This is the ideal. No pressure, host couples. Some pressure. What we've asked is for at least once a month for there to be an intentional gathering of some sort. That doesn't mean it's going to be everybody, but it may be that the husband reaches out to the guys and says, it might say, can we eat lunch? And on another night, the wife says, can y'all come over and we can eat dessert and talk? So, and it may be that everybody gets together. But there's going to be times of, let's spend time together. Let's be in each other's presence. Hey, I'm all about the daughter that I told you about, whose boyfriend we met this weekend. They met on Snapchat.
Is that an online
I'm like, listen, y'all, texts are great for like sharing little bitty facts. Like texts are wonderful for saying things like, I'm going to be late. Okay. I love you. Texts are not great for what we've been talking about. Like, so we're going to spend time with each other. Key and I were talking before class, and he made the good point that our children, this is a real thing. It's not, our children aren't worse than we were. It's not harder to be a Christian today, but there's a different set of stumbling blocks. And one of them is that our children, my children, aren't as skilled at interpersonal communication as maybe my parents were and that I was. And it's because, not to be cliche, they hide behind their phones. They think that they're making connections when they're texting or snapping one another, and they're just not. And so no supper club could be healthy if all you did was text, right? That would be weird.
We all need another text.
Right. And then finally, intentional communication. Now here's what I mean by that. This is something that the host couples will lead out in, at least initially. I know here's the genesis of all this. Here's how it started. Brad Hodges, who is our group's pastor, asked to meet with me. And I thought he was going to ask our class to divide. That's what I thought was going to happen. So we all get together, Brad and I. We all get together, and I don't know what Brad's going to say. And he in the conversation, he got to this is what he wanted to ask me. And I had to tell him the truth. He said, Tim, is it possible for somebody to come to your class and for them to be able to have something, I can't remember exactly how he said it, but the idea he was asking is, could somebody come to your class and be faithful in attendance and they could just be falling apart and nobody know about it? And I said, yes. And he said, I'm not going to ask you to divide, but fix that. And so that's how all of this started. Now, it had already been talked about. Like we're all aware that our class is large, and as much as I love this, there's not a lot of the meaningful relationships don't happen on Sunday mornings. They're grown and enjoyed outside of our time together on Sunday mornings. And so in response to Brad, because he asked a good, important question, and it's because we were failing in that area, this is our leadership's attempt to take a step toward being healthier in that regard. None of the leadership, and I hope none of you, I want to have a Sunday school class where if you get involved, I'm not saying everything's going to be perfect, and I'm not saying you won't fall apart, but we will have done what we can as a group of people who love one another to promote the well-being of everyone in the room. And if you're willing to tell the truth and willing to participate, you will at least have somebody offering community to you. That's what this is ultimately about. Does anybody have anything else to add to what we've talked about this morning? I love all of you. I really do. Not this class, but I'm saying like this is why, like I'm not a pastor, but like this is Mary Margaret and I, this is our ministry. And for some of you, this is your ministry. This is what you do. This is the thing that brings you the most love of the Lord in our church. Like this is where you feel most close to the Lord. And I want this to work. I want this to be successful, and I want everybody who's willing to participate. And if you're not willing, please ask yourself why. Is it pride? Is it that I don't know. But if you're not willing to participate, I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm saying make sure that there's a good reason, because this is something the Bible asks and expects and is modeled. This is important stuff. This is not just lanyard. This is the heart of what it means to live together as Christians. Let's pray together. Lord, please help. Not for the benefit of our class, not so we grow, not so it looks good to Brad, but Father, for your honor and for the health of me and these friends in the room, please let these succeed in a way that is faith growing and sin ending and joy giving. Lord, all these things that we've talked about, Lord, please as this process begins, let there be real fellowship, real friendships that develop. Lord, help those of us in the room who aren't as comfortable with this idea, Lord, to step out, take a little risk, be willing to be a little bit uncomfortable, and Lord, help those groups that have, maybe every group will have somebody like that in it. Lord, help those participants who are a little bit reluctant to just be enveloped in warmth, to feel welcome and safe, and help it to be enjoyable, Lord. So, Lord, everybody needs you to bless this endeavor if it's going to do anything of merit. So, Lord, please, host couples, participants, everybody, Lord, let this only be a process that pleases you and honors you and turns into our benefit, things that are promoting our well-being, Lord. Amen.